Good morning. Good morning, Daily Huddle family. Today is Tuesday, July the 2nd, and we are here on Tuesdays where my co-host, Kathryn Sabol, and I talk everything communications and relationships. And we do that because we know that more effective communication builds better relationships, and better relationships builds better families, better communities, better business, and a better life. And there are a few words that I would imagine if you've been on this earth more than 5 years, you've probably heard. And those words are everything happens for a reason. So we wonder if you agree. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Kathryn.
Thanks, Tara. Yes, in fact, this topic came up because I texted you those very words. And you
Right.
wrote back and you said, those words. So we wanted to dive into what does that mean and how do people relate to it? And for me, well, spoiler alert, I do agree. But there's a caveat. I do agree that everything happens for a reason, but I'm going to share why and what the caveat is. In fact, if when my son was diagnosed with a seizure disorder when he was 6 months old, if somebody had said to me, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, but everything happens for a reason," I might have punched him in the face. It would have really pissed me off. So, why, you say, do I agree then with that phrase? And the reason for me is I do think things happen for a reason, but I also think most of our experience in this world is made up. It's made up by our brain. And our brain is a patterning machine, as you know, Tara, that's your work, right? Like it looks at a situation and it patterns. What do I recognize this? What is it similar to? What is it different from? How can I label it? That's part of our survival system, right? If I know it's a danger, then I can react to it in that way. And so, like, have you ever gone shopping for a car and then for the next few days, week, whatever, until you buy that car, it's the only car you see? You're like, God, there's so many MDXs on the road, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And that's because our brain is designed to look for those things. We have it in our mind, we're looking. So I think that when things happen and we see, oh, this happened for that reason, it's a function of how we operate and it's part of creating our experience. So I don't think that, like, if I don't think that Michael had to have a seizure disorder for something else to happen in the world. Like, that means that there's human suffering for what? For something else, like to have, like, so Dr. P keep his job. So that doesn't make any sense to me. I can't buy into that part of it. But is that part of the reason that you and I met? Yeah. Would
Mhm.
we have met if Michael didn't have a seizure disorder or Caroline and then there wasn't that connection? I don't know. We might have met on an elevator. We don't know. So I guess the answer from me, and I know a little bit about how you see it, but I want to hear more, is I don't think that for me, I believe we have free will. I don't think there's a puppeteer saying, oh, well, this happens so that this could happen and then that can happen. I think that I think that we see things in the way that we want to see them in a lot of times. And I think it looks like there is a reason.
Mhm.
What do you think? Do you agree?
So, you know what? I'll put it to you this way because I don't agree, as you know. Um, if if you were given the choice to um, have had Michael born without a seizure disorder, but you would have never met me, would you take it?
Mhm.
Damn right you would have.
Yeah, like, love you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So same thing. If someone would have said to me, um, and my husband is no doubt the love of my life, and still, if I could turn the clock back and not have had Caroline's brain damaged by seizures for 19 years, but I wouldn't have met Mike, I'd take it a minute.
yeah.
So, um, I I definitely have moved past wanting to talk people out of that mindset. When people used to say that to me, just like you said, it made me want to punch them in the face. I would actually like just see myself like, no, everything doesn't happen for a reason. I don't agree with that. Um, and so I've given this a lot of thought. And the reason why I just simply don't subscribe to it is because it makes me feel powerless. It makes me feel like there is a bit of a puppeteer in the sky. Um, and I I just can't imagine. To me, it feels like sacrifice. Like
Right.
we're going to sacrifice these people's lives, and they will truly suffer, um, but not these people. Or
Mhm.
Caroline's ability to have what she wanted in this life, which was to be a mother and a second grade teacher. It's not asking for too much. She will never have that. And so, whatever good can come from what happened to her is not good enough to me.
Mhm.
And what sounds crappy about this coming out of my mouth is there's way worse suffering than what Caroline has endured. And I do know that. And when I stop and think about that suffering, I still can't subscribe to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as you're talking, part of the clarity for me is that it's not that there's a reason preemptively, like before the event, like Caroline is going to have the seizure disorder so that then these things can happen. It's more for me retroactively. This happened.
Mhm.
It happened. It's part of life. That's what happens. I don't think, and what could I see as an opportunity here to either find some good in it or, you know what I mean? And so we can be grateful. And that's hard, I think, for the human brain. It's hard for me to hold two things at once that are almost opposites. Like, yes, I'm so grateful to have met you, and I would love to have never met you and Michael not have seizures. I can hold those two things, right? At the same time. So, although I wish Michael didn't have seizures, I'm so grateful for what I've learned and how far he's come. And, he's truly a miracle in many ways. And I don't know if I would have that appreciation if we hadn't gone through this, or all the people that I've met. There are families that I've met because of the seizures that I would never have met. So
Mhm.
I think that's the distinction for me is it's the puppeteer I can't subscribe to because that means we don't have free will. And you're right. Why bother? Why bother being nice? Why bother taking a shower every day? Why bother getting up? Why try to do good? Like it's all gonna happen anyway. So why not? And
Yeah.
yeah, I just can't buy into that.
I think that here's where we are a little bit aligned on this topic is I, I think what you're talking about really is perspective. Like what gifts can you see that have come from suffering? And I see that. And I also believe that it is our responsibility to bring goodness from suffering. Like to me, it's much, much more action oriented.
Yeah.
Like I will go to my grave making trying to keep my promise to my children that their suffering would not be wasted, that it will matter, it will inspire other people. And every once in a while, I can communicate that to Caroline in such a way that she kind of understands it. And
Hmm.
when I do, she truly lights up. It's really
Hmm.
hard for her to understand. I have to break it down. Like not too long ago, I'm up in my office right now, and there's like a little workout space, and she does these little workouts with the YouTube videos. And I'll get on my Peloton and she'll do the workout and we'll be in there together. And the last time we did that up here, somehow she landed on this very hard workout. And she has trouble with balance. She has trouble with coordination. Her stamina is low because she can't do a lot of exercising because it will bring on seizures. And any normal person that was doing that video would have quit. I mean, she was struggling through the whole thing, 30 minutes of like grunting and falling. And I almost said, Caroline, just we'll pick another one. But I just decided to let her go. And she finished it. She finished the whole thing.
Oh.
And that was an opportunity for me to tell her this is what I mean about you inspiring other people. Look how hard you worked for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
kind of on a grander level, she can't see it, but I try to help her to see what I'm talking about is that we have the ability to make bad things, hard things, suffering matter.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe you're right that it could be deemed perspective because it is taking something and saying, what good can I make come out of this,
Mhm.
And I do think that we do have to make meaning out of things as humans. Otherwise, there is, you know what I mean? Like there isn't a lot of depth to what we're doing, to my point about why bother
Yeah.
trying. And if we can see everything as a gift, so maybe it is not seeing it as a reason that this happened, because that is pretty definitive. But, the gifts that can come out now that it has happened is a better way to describe that and to look at it and say, this is what I can see as the opportunity and, how we can share joy.
Mm-hmm. I- absolutely. And I also, when I hear that, it makes me want to put a little bit of emphasis on a kind of like a sister perspective of this. And it's that sometimes I think we say everything happens for a reason, uh, to not give ourselves permission to say that this sucks and this hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's an important part of growth,
Mm-hmm.
to accept suffering, not
Mm-hmm.
to live in it, not to wallow in it, but to feel it. And I have learned that the hard way over the past many years, that you can't run from it. I always say pain is undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it will catch you if you don't let it in, because letting it in allows you to let it out.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're just living to fight it off, saying, oh, everything happens for a reason, one day God will reveal the answers. And until then, I'm just going to slap this smile on my face. That's not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's also the hard part because, we make up that we're indestructible and you know what I mean? Like that we're going to live forever. We often don't think about our mortality. We just live as if we've got all the days in the world. And the reality is we don't. We could drop dead tomorrow. Something awful could happen to somebody that we love. And life keeps moving. It's all part of it. For me, it's just really hard sometimes to live in that. I think that's why the Buddhists say to meditate on death, meditate on your mortality, because it does bring us more into the present. Um, I think why I'm saying that though is it is hard to think about that and still it's the holding of the two things. Awful things are happening all over the place right now. Could happen to me. I'm so grateful that it hasn't, yet today, thank goodness, but it could. And like, what does that mean about it's just hard to get my brain around. Like, what does that mean about my right now? Should I be doing things differently? Should I be in a better mood? I'm grumpy. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm taking it for granted. It's like, and how do we operate in that? You
Yeah.
know?
I'm stepping away from like super terrible, unforgiving suffering. And I'll just take us to something that happened about 4 weeks ago. And I think it really shines a light on what we're talking about. And I've told you for sure this, and maybe some of y'all, but it was about 4 weeks ago. It was a Friday night, and my husband had driven his motorcycle to Atlanta, which is 2.5 hours away, to get it serviced because there's not a place here. He's been riding motorcycles for 35 years, never had an accident. So he's coming back from Atlanta. He's stopped to call me, this crappy traffic. And then he's like, I'm just going to stop and eat. Go ahead and, you eat whatever you want to. So it's Friday night. He's not here. I can turn on whatever trashy show I want to. I turn it on. I make my favorite vegan nachos and I sit my happy ass down on the couch and start enjoying my nachos and my TV show. At some point, I get up and walk around the counter and peek at my phone, which had been silenced. And there's like 4 messages from him. I've had an accident and I'm in the hospital. Well, you can imagine my fear and horror. So I race to the hospital, totally in a panic. He has a broken ankle, which he had to have surgery for. And because he had on probably $2,000 worth of protective gear, that was the worst of his accidents. I mean, he had road rash and very scrapes and things. So anyway, fast forward, it screwed up our summer. We are big hikers. I mean, so much negative crap comes from it. And it also forced me to stop and do a couple things. One is just the mortality of it. It just reminded me how much I wildly love this man and how much he does for me, not only physically, but for my spirit. But something else happened. And this is where good things come from tragedy is Mike, it's very hard for him to let me do things for him. And he has had to let me wait on him. And it has been such a sweet season of growth for us. It has really been magical. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm sick of it. But really, truly, I mean, what the closeness that we were able to create through this, that will never go away. It will always be a memory of a really sweet time for us. So I think that good things can happen from bad things. And I like your perspective. So I don't know. What are you thinking about, Sorrel? I see you grinning.
Uh, First of all, I want to say thank you for the conversation. It's there's no coincidence on the face of this planet and in the universe. Giovanni and I have been trafficking in this conversation about chaos.
Mhm.
So this conversation brings that to mind. So first of all, both of you, I want to say how much I identify with and feel everything you're dealing with your children and your husbands and your family. So nothing I'm about to say discounts any of that. But here's what the conversation reminds me of, is that Giovanni and I were having this conversation about cause and effect, right? I mean, you look throughout the universe, it's all physics, right? Sun comes out, water dries up, rain falls, plant grows, right? So there is this kind of order to the universe and order to our lives that leaves us both grateful for and rebelling against nature. You know, it's like, I don't want cause and effect. I want to have free will.
Mhm.
And so a lot of what happens in nature and what happens in our lives points to that there is a huge swath of my life, of our lives, that's just happening.
Yeah.
And then to the extent that what happens is in my favor, I call it good. And to the extent that what happens is not in my favor, I suffer, I call it bad. And then Gio and I were looking and we said, gosh, you know, there's something marvelous that happens though, when we all get together. And when something happens that was unexpected, that brings us together, there's actually a moment in time when that happens, when cause and effect no longer applies. And I come up with this thing. Instead of everything happens for a reason, I want to say that everything happens for one reason and one reason only. And that reason is the opportunity that Caroline had when she was struggling on that bike. It's like, and it's the opportunity that Mike had when he had to relinquish all control and let you tend to him. And that one reason is choice.
Mm.
The
I
choice.
can get behind that.
Yeah, everything happens for one reason. And that one reason is choice. The choice to actually be the author of my life right now. And so I'm in awe at how Caroline is authoring her life. You know, regardless of her physical and mental conditions, I'm in awe at how Mike is now authoring your relationship with him and how you are. So I'm so delighted for this conversation. And I'm going to run with that one phrase. Everything happens for one reason. And that reason is choice.
I totally love that. I'm going to use that next time somebody says that to me instead of wanting to slap them. Oh, what do you think?
What you say, Sarah, reminds me, I think I've said it on here before, but one of my favorite authors, Michael Singer, says, do you know what it's called when something has a 0.00001% chance of happening? It's a miracle. Do you know what it's called when something has a 0.00001% chance of happening? It's a tragedy, right? They're the same. It's just what we put on it. Just like you said, it's just our judgment on it. And really the universe is not judging it. It's just happening. It's just happening. It's just happening, you know? And it's hard as a human to be in that experience and not judge it. And then to be like, it's okay that that was a tragedy, you know? It's like, how do we be in that?
Yeah. You know, one of our mentors once said, If you think all of that stuff you're fretting about really matters, go on a beach on a dark night and scream to the stars and see how indifferent they are to your suffering.
Yeah, so true.
So, yeah.
So
Choice.
how do we use this conversation to carry forward into our relationships? What would you say?
I would say this. It's a sobering for me to confront that what my wife says and how she says it isn't about me. And yet what she says and how she says it offers an opportunity for me to choose to continue to be loving, patient, or in a moment to butt my head up against the wall and be a real butt. But either way, even that faux pas on my part when I'm a butt gives me in that next moment an opportunity to choose. So I'll keep going back to that. We can really strengthen our relationships by choosing, like consciously going into every moment, even when I'm not. The next moment is that moment to say, this is my opportunity to exercise my capacity to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And not beat myself up when I don't. Just get right back up and choose again.
I like that. That reminds me of one of the 4 agreements that, we tend to take everything personally. And so many times it's not about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kathryn, what about you? How do you think we would take this conversation into relationships?
I agree with Sherelle. That's what I was going to say. To be at choice in how we respond. And it's funny, I've been thinking a lot about not taking things personally because actually, when I look at it, I take a lot of things really personally, a lot. Things I don't even think I'm taking personally, I'm taking personally. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who will probably be a guest on the huddle in the coming weeks. And she was talking about how animals just really like your dog comes up, he brings you a toy, you don't play with them, you shoo him away, dog comes right back with another toy. And it's like, oh yeah, I didn't take it personally. It didn't sulk away and say, I'm never bringing you another toy again. But I do that. My inner toddler does that, and it's like, oh, right. I offered that up. And then I thought about it the other day about something where I actually think that my reaction to somebody could have been misconstrued as rude or something like that. And I was like, oh gosh, it really wasn't about them. I could see how they might think I was being rude to them. I wasn't thinking about them at all. I was over here busy thinking about something else. So I was looking at it from both perspectives. And so for me, it just opens up more choice points to say, I'm not going to take that personally. What if it were true? What if it were true that it wasn't personal? Especially in a situation where I really am taking it personally and it feels very personal. If I can open up to that perspective a lot of times, then it just the opportunity, there's the possibility that it may not be, for me, opens up a lot of different opportunities to go in a different direction and not go down a rabbit hole with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how that can work, because if we're taking it personally, we're not really truly connecting to somebody else. We're in our head and we're distant. And that's not what we're about here. We're talking about closeness.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for me, I'm questioning myself, like next time someone says that to me, like I have a stock response. I never can just let it go. So obviously I still have some work to do. When someone's like, oh, everything happens for a reason, I'm like, I don't really see it that way. And I guess that's okay. I always say I don't really see it that way. I believe that it is our responsibility to bring good from suffering or from unfortunate events. That's what I always say. I don't know if I should continue to say that based on this conversation or not.
I think that's still true. I am curious. I am curious though, Sorrel, you said there are no coincidences in the universe or on the planet. And to me, how does that live in the space of everything if we don't believe that everything happens for a reason? Because to me, it says that if there are no coincidences, then maybe everything does happen for a reason, How do you see that?
Um, uh, I love the phrase in the scene in the movie V that says, "I, like God, don't traffic in coincidences." And so it is from there that I'm coming, that whatever it is, it's not a coincidence. It's my call
Mhm.
to choosing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Giovanni has a thought. I can't tell if he's cameras on or that's artwork. It's kind of a half and half. What you got, Giovanni? There you are.
Hey, I am in traffic, so I'm gonna take my camera off. But
Good.
I was really okay. I'll leave it on for a minute. I was really enjoying this conversation, and something came up for me in that has not come up this way before. So I have overwhelming evidence for the possibility of cause and effect. And then I have overwhelming evidence for the possibility of coincidence. And in many ways, free will or coincidence, right? And I really, and I was grappling with, I was being challenged with the notion of choice as a function of reaction. In my relationship, for me to, I can see myself reacting often, or taking something personal, or reacting to something that happened in a relationship I love, in a relationship I cherish, where most of the time, wherever it matters, it's in the relationships I care about, and most of the time, and in many moments, I'm not really choosing. I'm reacting. So a little bit of a cause and effect thing. But then I was just thinking, then there's this moment of reflection, which is, for me, my experience is a little chaotic, like Tara was pointing to, that moment of reflection. What am I going to do with that reaction I had? Or what am I going to do with the reaction that the other person had? And I can see the possibility of choice. I can see it. And I choose intention. I choose to look at the world of my intentions with people. What do I want to create with that person, in spite of what just happened? Before whatever I got upset about, there was an intention that I care about with that person. I love, affinity. Let me take a look at the intention. And then I look at the intention, and then my intention gives me my reflection, and then choice is available. And I'm starting to think or lean on that maybe choice is more available for me than I tend to think. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about.
That gives me like really good food for thought, like just to stop and think about what my choices are. And that there will be an effect to every choice that I make. Yeah. All right, Kathryn.
I love it. And I think the thing for me is to think about that we actually do have choice about what we think also. Sometimes we think we don't have choice in that, but that really is where it starts, is what are we thinking that then leads to, how we interact with the world. So on that note, we're going to close out with our 7 tenets and talk about love and have an intention for love. I'm going to look at that today. And where do I choose love? And give of your spirit, of your time, of your resources. Eat those plants, get that rest, unlike I did last night. Don't be me, get that rest. Move that body, laugh, and relax. Don't forget to relax and stress less. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all next time on the Daily Huddle. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, y'all. I'll stick around if you want to see my video.